The ice snapped like a whip crack, and Sarah disappeared into the dark water, her cry swallowed by the frigid depths. I was halfway across the pond, pulse racing, boots skidding as I sprinted toward the jagged hole where she'd been gliding moments before. The crowd's shouts felt miles away, but I couldn't wait for rescue, not with her out there clawing to stay afloat. I never imagined a night of warm drinks and kids' giggles would end like this. But here I am, lunging toward the ice, praying it doesn't give way. This is how it all began. Hey, I'm Ethan. I'm 23, living in a quiet town in Vermont where winter feels like it runs the show. The kind of cold that seeps into your core and lingers. I work at a small electronics repair shop, fixing phones, blenders, whatever folks bring in. It's not flashy, but I enjoy it, keeps my hands moving and my mind steady. On weekends, I coach kids at the local rink, teaching them to skate, tumble, and get back up. It's the highlight of my week. I'm not rolling in money, just renting a tiny apartment with a finicky radiator, but I'm content. Life's straightforward and I like it that way. I grew up in a home that felt more like a battlefield. My folks argued more than they spoke, and by 17, they'd both checked out emotionally. I learned to look after myself early on, but I don't carry bitterness. Instead, I try to help others, whether it's fixing Mrs. Carter's kettle on the house when it conks out or teaching little Sophie next door how to lace up her skates so she can join the other kids. It feels like I'm mending more than just gadgets. Our town's small, maybe a few thousand folks, all gathered around Willow Pond. It freezes solid every winter, turning into the heart of the community. Families skate, kids play pickup hockey, and elders sip hot drinks by fire pits. It's the kind of place where everyone knows you or at least nods like they do. Every year I put together a community skate night. Nothing big, just fairy lights, a Bluetooth speaker pumping classic rock, and a table with free cider. I haul out extra scarves and mittens for anyone who comes unprepared. It's my way of bringing people together on the ice. That's where I saw Sarah. She's my boss at the shop, handling orders and keeping things running smoothly. Sarah's 38, but she could pass for younger. Her dark blonde hair glows under the lights, always pulled back in a tidy bun, and her voice is warm enough to thaw frost. But she's reserved, like there's a barrier around her. She's all business, polite but guarded, and stays late at the shop, clicking away at her computer long after everyone's gone. I figured she prefers the solitude. Once, I caught her staring out the shop window, eyes distant, like she was somewhere else entirely. I didn't pry, it wasn't my place. Word around town is she's divorced, moved here a few years back and took over the shop. She's striking with sharp features and a quiet grace, but it's not just her looks. There's a heaviness to her, like she's carrying a story she doesn't share. I never pressed. I'm just the guy who fixes the toaster when it sparks, not someone she'd confide in. Friday night was the skate event, and Willow Pond was buzzing. Kids darted across the ice, parents cheered, and the air smelled of cedar smoke and cider. I was in my zone, tying skates for a pair of 8-year-olds, teasing them about becoming Olympic champs. I handed out spare scarves to folks shivering on the benches, the fairy lights sparkling against the snow, music bouncing across the pond. It felt like one of those nights where everything clicks. Then I spotted Sarah. She stood by the cider table, clutching a paper cup, watching the skaters. She wasn't dressed for the ice, just jeans, a wool sweater, and a scarf knotted tight. Her hair was down for once, catching the light like gold. She never came to these things, so I figured she was just dropping by, maybe checking on something work-related. I wandered over, brushing my hands on my jeans. "Didn't think I'd see you here, boss," I said, keeping it casual. She turned, offering a small, cautious smile, like she was dipping a toe in unfamiliar waters. "Thought I'd check out the hype," she said, her voice nearly lost in the music. I grinned. "You ever skate? Pond's perfect tonight." She shook her head, that smile flickering. "Not in ages. I'd probably wipe out." I chuckled. "I'd catch you. Got plenty of practice with the kids." Sarah hesitated, her gaze flickering between me and the ice, like she was weighing whether I was joking or not, then turned back to the pond. "Maybe another time," she murmured. I didn't push, just went back to helping a kid named Liam adjust his skates, though my eyes kept drifting to Sarah. She lingered longer than I expected, sipping her cider, watching the skaters. Something about her seemed different tonight, not just the loose hair or the absence of her usual work jacket. She seemed alone, not in an obvious way but quietly, like she was part of the moment but not fully in it. A bit later, I noticed her chatting with Liam, the kid I'd helped. He's a whirlwind, always coaxing people onto the ice. Whatever he said must have worked, because soon enough, Sarah was grabbing a pair of skates from the spare pile. I raised an eyebrow but kept quiet. She laced them up, unsteady but resolute, and stepped onto the ice. Liam stayed near, laughing, guiding her. A small smile broke across Sarah's face, like she was rediscovering something long buried. I caught myself grinning. She looked at ease out there, even if her movements were cautious. I went back to pouring cider, bantering with parents, keeping tabs on the kids. The night was humming, music blaring, fires snapping, everyone caught up in the joy. Then came a sound that stopped me cold, a sharp, sickening crack like wood splitting. The ice. My head snapped toward the noise. People were yelling, pointing toward the pond's edge where the ice thins out. Sarah was gone. A dark gash yawned in the ice, water churning. Liam was shouting, "She fell. She fell." My gut lurched. I'd skated this pond forever, knew the danger zones, told everyone to stick to the center. Sarah must have wandered too far, caught up with Liam, or lost in the moment. I didn't think, just dropped the cider jug and bolted, my boots crunching snow. Voices called out, someone fumbled for a phone to dial 911, but I knew help wouldn't come fast enough. Not in this cold. Not with water that could kill in minutes. "Ethan Cole," someone yelled, maybe old Mrs. Harrow. I ignored it. The ice creaked as I neared the hole, my pulse hammering. I could see Sarah's hands now, clawing at the edge, her face ghostly, eyes wide with fear. She was fighting to stay up, but her soaked clothes dragged her down, the cold sapping her strength. "Hold on, Sarah," I shouted, dropping to my knees, crawling to distribute my weight. The ice moaned, threatening to crack. I was maybe 10 feet away, close enough to see her lips quivering, her breath sharp and shallow. "I'm coming, just hold on." I called again, my voice breaking. I didn't know if the ice would take my weight. Didn't care. All I could think was that she was out there, alone, and I wouldn't let her sink. I inched closer, the cold biting through my jeans, the pond rumbling like it was alive. Her eyes met mine, terrified but trusting, like she knew I'd reach her. I reached the hole's edge, hands trembling, the water so dark it seemed bottomless. This was it, no turning back. I slid closer, the ice groaning louder, like it was daring me to keep going. Sarah's fingers were slipping, scraping at the jagged edge, her face pale as the surrounding snow. Her eyes held mine, panic mixed with a flicker of hope, like she believed I'd pull her out. The water was black, colder than anything I'd ever known, and I knew we had only minutes before the cold would take her. "Sarah, grab my hand," I yelled, stretching as far as I could without cracking the ice beneath me. My knees burned from the cold, my palms raw against the frozen surface. She reached, her fingers shaking, and I caught her wrist. Sarah's skin was colder than the ice itself, slick and numb to the touch. I pulled steadily, pouring every ounce of strength into it. The ice groaned louder, but I held on, couldn't let go. "You're okay, I've got you," I said, more to steady her than because I was certain. Her body emerged, water spilling, her clothes sodden and heavy. She gasped, choking on the frigid air, and I dragged her onto a thin sheet of ice a few feet from the hole. It held just barely. The crowd's shouts from the shore were faint, carried off by the wind and the creaking pond. Someone yelled about 911, but I knew help was too far off. This was on me. Sarah was shivering violently, her teeth clattering like a broken engine. Her sweater and jeans clung to her, drenched, and I could see her struggling to stay conscious. Hypothermia was kicking in fast. I ripped off my jacket, a heavy wool thing, and draped it over her shoulders. "Keep this on," I said, voice firm. She tried to protest, her lips barely moving, but I cut her off. "Don't argue. You need it." The cold hit me like a slap without the jacket, but I pushed it aside. She was in worse shape. We were stranded on this brittle patch, maybe 10 feet from the hole, still too far from shore. The ice was cracked, webbed with fractures, and every shift felt like a roll of the dice. I knew skating, knew how to balance on ice, so I stayed low, spreading my weight. "Stay flat," I told her. "Don't stand. We crawl okay?" She nodded, her eyes glassy but fixed on me, fighting to stay present. To keep her with me, I started talking, anything to distract her from the cold. "You know, last week this kid Ollie tried to spin on the rink, landed flat on his back but just laughed and got up. Swears he's gonna be the next big thing." I forced a grin, watching her face. She blinked slowly, like it took effort, but her lips twitched, almost a smile. "Sounds like you," she whispered, voice trembling. "Always lifting people up." Her words hit me hard. I didn't know she'd seen that in me. I kept talking about the kids, the rink, dumb stuff, like the time I spilled cider on my skates and coach smelling like apples. She listened, her breathing easing slightly. Then she spoke, her voice faint. "I came tonight because I was tired of being alone at home. Just me in the silence." Her words were quiet but heavy, echoing the loneliness I'd glimpsed in her eyes at the shop. I wanted to respond, but the ice shifted beneath us, a low moan that stopped my heart. "We gotta move," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Slow. Follow me." We crawled toward thicker ice near the shore. My hands were numb, knees screaming from the cold, but I focused on the path ahead. The shore was maybe 30 yards off, the fire pits glowing like a distant promise. Sarah followed, her movements sluggish, breaths short and sharp. I kept talking, telling her about the time I taught a kid to skate backward and he barreled into me instead. She let out a weak laugh, and that sound fueled me. We'd made it about 10 yards when a sharp crack split the air like a rifle shot. The ice was giving way again. I froze, signaling Sarah to stop. "Don't move," I whispered. My eyes scanned the dark surface for cracks, but the moonlight was too faint, the fairy lights too far. The ice sagged beneath us, soft and unsteady. "We're okay," I said, more to myself than her. "Just gotta be smart." Sarah was shaking harder, her arms barely holding her up. I reached over, gripping her shoulder. "Look at me." Her eyes met mine, hazy but still there. "You're not alone out here. I'm with you. We're getting out." She nodded, a small jerk of her head, but it was enough. I could see her fighting, not just the cold but whatever burden she carried inside. We moved again, slower, every inch a battle. I stayed low, guiding her, watching for any sign of the ice failing. We were halfway to shore when I spotted a thicker patch, maybe solid enough to hold us. "Almost there," I told her. "Just a bit more." My voice was steady but my pulse raced. The cold was getting to me too, fingers stiff, chest tight. I didn't let her see it. She needed me steady. We reached the thicker patch, and for a moment I dared to hope. The ice felt firmer, less creaky. I helped Sarah sit up, still wrapped in my jacket. "We're good," I said, catching my breath. "Just need to." The words choked off. A deafening crack tore through the air, and the ice beneath me buckled. I shoved Sarah forward onto the thicker patch just as my leg plunged into the freezing water. The cold stabbed like shards of glass, slicing to the bone. I gasped, scrabbling at the ice, hauling myself up before the water could claim me. Sarah screamed my name, her voice cutting through the haze of fear. I dragged myself free, jeans soaked, body trembling. The water had stolen my breath, but I forced myself to move, crawling to her, seizing her hand. "I'm okay," I panted, though my leg was numb, useless. She was crying now, quiet sobs, her hands clutching my arm like I was her anchor. We huddled there, drenched and freezing, the shore still too far. The ice groaned, a warning we weren't out of danger. I looked at her, face pale, hair plastered to her cheeks. "We're not done," I said, voice raw. "You with me?" She nodded, eyes fierce despite the cold. "With you," she whispered. We clung to each other, breaths clouding in the icy air, the pond still threatening to pull us under. I wasn't letting go, not now, not ever. The ice was treacherous, creaking and splitting like it wanted us gone. My leg was dead weight, jeans frozen stiff against my skin. Sarah gripped my arm, her breath short and ragged, face ghostly under the faint moonlight. We were crouched on a patch of thicker ice, but it was far of safe. The shore was maybe 20 yards off, the fire pits flickering like a cruel tease. The crowd's voices carried, faint and panicked, but no sirens yet, help was still too far. "We gotta keep moving," I said, voice rough from the cold. Sarah nodded, eyes wide but locked on me, fighting to stay present. My jacket hung heavy around her, but it wasn't enough. Her lips were blue, shivers so violent I felt them through her grip. Hypothermia was closing in, and I wasn't far behind. Giving up wasn't an option. "Stay low," I told her, flattening to my stomach. "Follow my path. Slow and smart." She mimicked me, crawling behind, hands scraping the ice. I led, testing each inch with my palms, listening for that telltale creak. Every move was a gamble. The pond was alive, shifting beneath us, and one wrong move could end it. We'd gone maybe 5 yards when a sickening crack rang out, louder than before. My heart seized. Before I could yell, a chunk of ice broke free ahead, splitting our path to shore. Black water surged, hungry, and our patch tilted. I grabbed Sarah's arm, yanking her back, but the shift sent me sliding toward the edge. My legs went over, the cold biting like 1,000 knives. I clawed at the ice, fingers slipping, body half submerged. "Ethan!" Sarah screamed, her voice sharp enough to pierce my panic. She lunged, seizing my wrists, her face fierce with a strength I hadn't seen before. Her hands trembled, but she held tight. "I've got you," she said, voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. She braced her knees against the ice and pulled hard. My chest burned as I kicked, fighting to climb out. The water dragged, relentless, but Sarah's grip was stronger. With a final heave, she hauled me onto the ice, both of us collapsing, gasping. I lay there a moment, breath fogging, body screaming from the cold. Sarah was beside me, hands still on my arms, like she feared I'd vanish. "You okay?" I panted, looking at her. She nodded, tears freezing on her cheeks. "You almost—" She didn't finish, just shook her head. I squeezed Sarah's hand, my fingers stiff from the cold. "Not going anywhere," I said. "Not without you." We couldn't stay put. The ice was fracturing, tiny cracks spreading like veins beneath us. "We're too close," I said. "We gotta move now." Sarah nodded, her jaw clenched, and took the lead, crawling forward with careful, determined movements. I followed, stunned by her resolve despite the cold draining her. "Keep talking," she called over her shoulder. "Keeps me awake." I forced a shaky laugh, teeth chattering. "Okay, last week this kid Ellie tried skating backward, ended up in a full split like a cartoon." Sarah let out a faint chuckle, her breath clouding. "Sounds painful," she said. "She okay?" "Yeah," I replied. Got up laughing. "Kids are tough." I paused, then added, "Like you." She glanced back, eyes softening briefly before turning forward again. We kept moving, trading the lead. When Sarah slowed, I'd talk, about the rink, the kids, anything to keep her sharp. When my leg dragged, heavy from the cold, she'd speak. "I used to skate," she said quietly. "As a kid, my dad taught me, before everything." I caught the weight in her voice. "Before what?" I asked gently. Silence hung, broken only by our hands scraping the ice. "Before I married the wrong guy," she said at last. "Thought he was it. Turns out he was just a good liar. Caught him with someone else. Broke me. That's why I came here, to start over. But trusting again, it's hard." Her voice cracked, not from the cold but something deeper. She stopped crawling, head bowed. I slid closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You're here now," I said. "That's not nothing." She looked at me, eyes raw. "Why do you do it, Ethan? Help everyone, fix everything?" I shrugged, the cold fogging my thoughts. "Grew up in a house where nothing got fixed. Not the pipes, not us. I just want things better for people." It was the most I'd ever said about it, like dropping a weight I hadn't noticed I carried. Sarah nodded like she got it. "You're good at it," she said softly. "Better than you know." Her words warmed something the cold couldn't reach. We kept crawling, Sarah leading now, me trailing. The shore was closer, the fire pits brighter. Sirens wailed faintly, help was coming but we couldn't wait. The ice rumbled again, a low growl. "Faster," I urged, and we pushed harder, breaths ragged. Sarah's hands shook, but she didn't stop. I stayed close, ready to catch her. We were maybe 10 yards from shore when a final crack split the air, but the ice held. We hit solid ground, collapsing into the snow, the crowd rushing toward us. Blankets were thrown over us, hands pulling us up, voices shouting about ambulances. I barely registered them. All I saw was Sarah, wrapped in a blanket, eyes locked on mine like we were still out there, just us. Paramedics took over, checking for hypothermia, piling on more blankets. My leg was numb, body trembling, but I was alive. Sarah was alive. We sat side by side on a bench by the fire pit, too exhausted to speak, just breathing. The crowd gave us space, their voices a low murmur. I glanced at her, face glowing in the firelight, hair still damp but eyes steady. "You scared the hell out of me," I said, voice rough. She gave a small, real smile. "You didn't give up," she said. "I owe you." I shook my head. "You pulled me out too. We're even." She looked at me, long and quiet, like she was seeing me for the first time. The paramedics wanted to take us to the hospital, but Sarah waved them off. "I just need to go home," she said, then looked at me. "You're coming too. You're soaked." I didn't argue. We drove to her place, a cozy little house a few blocks from the pond. Inside it was warm, like stepping into an embrace. She lit the fireplace, handed me a towel and a mug of tea. We sat on the couch, fire crackling, neither of us saying much. The silence wasn't heavy, it felt right. The quiet felt earned, like we'd carved it out of the chaos. "Thank you," Sarah said at last, her voice soft. "Not just for out there but for being you." I smiled, hands curled around the warm mug. "You helped me too," I said, meaning it. Something had shifted, not just from the ice or the cold but from what we'd shared out there. She looked at me, eyes softer than I'd ever seen at the shop. "Stay for dinner," she said, not a question or a demand, just an invitation. I nodded. "I'd like that." We sat there, the fire warming us, the night outside still. Something new was beginning, small, unspoken, but real. The fire in Sarah's living room popped, casting soft shadows across the walls. We sat on her couch, tea mugs in hand, warmth sinking into my bones. After that night on the pond, my legs still ached from the icy water, but I felt more alive than I had in years. Sarah was quiet, her dark blonde hair drying in loose waves, her eyes gentler than they'd ever been at work. That night, we didn't talk much after she asked me to stay for dinner. We ate canned soup, chuckling at how terrible it tasted, and just sat together. It was simple, but it felt like the start of something. The days after felt different, not dramatically, just a subtle shift. I'd catch Sarah smiling at me at the shop, not her usual professional nod, but something warm, real. One morning I brought her coffee, black, no sugar, just how she liked it. "You're spoiling me, Ethan," she teased, voice light. I grinned. "Gotta keep the boss happy." She rolled her eyes, but her smile lingered. That's how it began. Small moments, easy, like we were learning each other without forcing it. We started meeting outside work. First, it was coffee at the shop after hours, sitting at the counter with the heater humming. We'd talk about nothing. Movies, the kids I coached, her favorite novels. Then it was walks by Willow Pond, now frozen solid and safe, the town's fairy lights glinting off the ice. One evening we paused by the shore, our breath clouding in the cold. I asked about her dreams, half joking. She stared at the pond, scarf snug around her neck. "I want to write a book someday," she said. "About starting over. Not sure I'm brave enough, though." I nudged her shoulder. "You survived that pond. You're plenty brave." She laughed softly, and I swear it was the best sound I'd heard in years. I shared my dream too, opening a skating school for kids, not just for tricks but to give them a place to feel free. "You'd be great at that," she said, eyes steady on mine. "You make people feel safe." That word hit me, safe. I didn't know I could be that for someone, especially her. The age thing came up one night over pizza at her place. We were on her couch, a bad rom-com on TV, when she got quiet. "Ethan," she said, picking at her slice, "I'm 38. You're 23. Don't you think?" She trailed off, but I knew what she meant. I set my plate down, facing her. "I don't care about that," I said plainly. "You're Sarah. That's what matters, not a number." She studied me, searching for a lie, but I meant it. "I just don't want you to wake up one day and feel trapped," she said softly. I shook my head. "Only thing I'd feel trapped by is not trying this." She didn't reply, just leaned her head on my shoulder. That was enough. The town started to notice. At the shop, my coworker Jake smirked when he saw me bring Sarah lunch. "Skating into her heart, huh?" he said, loud enough for her to hear. She blushed but laughed, and I flipped him off, grinning. Old Mrs. Carter, whose kettle I'd fixed for free, winked at me in the market. "That Sarah's a keeper," she said. The teasing was light, and it felt good, like the town was cheering us on. Sarah started showing up to more community events. Sunday potlucks, the rink to watch my kids skate. She'd bring cider, pass it out to parents, and I'd catch her smiling, more open than before. We were healing, both of us. Sarah wasn't so guarded anymore. One night, she told me about her ex, how he'd cheated, how it made her feel like she wasn't enough. "I thought I'd never trust again," she said, voice steady now. "But you're different." I didn't know what to say, so I just held her hand. Being with her made me feel stronger, like I wasn't just the kid from a broken home anymore. She saw me as more, and that made me want to be more. Winter pressed on, and an idea sparked. I wanted to do something for Sarah, something more than coffee runs or pizza nights. I picked up extra shifts at the rink, saved up, and ordered a pair of skates, quality ones, white leather, her size. I had the shop engrave her name on the side, simple and elegant, Sarah. It was a tribute to that night on the pond, to how we'd pulled through. I stashed them in my truck, waiting for the perfect moment. That moment came when we decided to host a free skating day for the kids. Sarah suggested it one evening, her eyes alight. "You love teaching them," she said. "Let's make it special." We planned it together, flyers, snacks, extra skates for anyone who needed them. The town rallied, donating blankets and thermoses of cider. On the day, Willow Pond buzzed with life. Kids laughing, parents cheering, the air sharp and cold. I coached the little ones, showing them how to glide, while Sarah passed out cookies and tied laces. We moved like a team, stealing glances, her smile cutting through the chill. As the kids cleared out, I grabbed the skates from my truck. The sun was dipping, painting the pond in hues of orange and pink. Sarah stood by the fire pit, warming her hands when I approached. "Got something for you," I said, handing her the box. She raised an eyebrow, curious, and opened it. Her breath hitched as she saw the skates, her fingers tracing her name. "Ethan," she said, voice soft, eyes gleaming. "They're perfect." I shrugged, playing it cool though my heart pounded. Figured you needed your own pair. For next time. She laughed, then hugged me, arms tight around my neck. You're too much, she whispered. I held her close, catching the scent of her scarf, wool and a hint of her shampoo. Try them on, I said. She laced them up, wobbly at first, and we stepped onto the ice together. The kids still around cheered and Sarah rolled her eyes, laughing. We skated slowly, hand in hand, her grip firm. She wasn't scared this time and neither was I. Later we sat on a bench by the pond, sharing a thermos of cider, the kids skating under the fairy lights. The air was still, just the scrape of blades and the fire's crackle. Sarah leaned against me, her new skates at her feet. I didn't think I'd ever feel this safe again, she said, barely above a whisper. I looked at her, the firelight catching her hair, her eyes calm and warm. Me neither, I said. Guess we're both lucky. We sat there watching the kids, their laughter ringing across the ice. It wasn't a big moment. No grand declarations or promises, just us building something real. That night on the pond, when I'd run out to save her, I hadn't known it would lead here. I hadn't realized one act of courage could change everything, but it did. For her, for me, for us. I thought of my childhood, the broken home I'd grown up in, how I'd always wanted to fix things. Sarah thought she was broken after her ex, but she wasn't. She just needed someone to stay. We found that in each other, not in fireworks or movie endings, but in the quiet love of coffee cups, bad jokes, and skates with your name on them. And as we sat there, the pond solid and steady under the stars, I knew we'd keep showing up, day after day, for as long as we could.